Ain't your boy keep styling and profiling through ex-wives and child support? Through the Amazon link in the description, of course. Woo!
Celebrity voice impersonator.
From the pages of the World Wrestling Federation magazine, here's updates.
Podhead people in the place to be. What's going on? It's me. I am here with my brother, Kyle, the other Kyle, not the Kyle, not Trapzilla. This is other Kyle. I just call him other Kyle. This is other Kyle. We met. We were brothers in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. We bumped into each other quite a bit on stage.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I probably bruised him as much as he bruised me. What's going on, Kyle? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. First off, thank you for suggesting this. The timing of it was fantastic. Thank you for coming up with the idea. And it made me actually sit and watch these matches again. The topic of this, if you've seen the thumbnail, are the top 5 best and worst Money in the Bank cash-ins. I think we're going to go with, how about we start with the worst? That way we can end on a positive. We can end on a positive note, right?
That'd
okay.
be good.
So you came up with this idea. What made you think of this one?
I think it works perfectly with the time since, Money in the Bank is coming up May 10th. I think May 10th.
Yeah.
I think that's probably it. Yeah, and it's going to be different this year. They're doing a whole, it's going to be on the headquarters, on the roof.
Yeah.
Or something.
It through the entire Titan Tower, which WWE has decided they're going to abandon for a new building anyway. So I guess they decided on the way out, we might as well just destroy everything. Leave it for the next guy.
Interesting.
What do you think of this concept?
I'm not sure what to think. I like that they're thinking out of the box. I mean, if you're going to do something, at least it feels completely different.
Yeah.
You're not going to see this any other time.
No, I think you kind of have to. I've said this before. I think with what's going on now, you kind of have to think outside. You don't have a choice. They can't have this in a big stadium anymore, and they probably won't be able to have events like this in big stadiums for a long, long time. I've actually heard something from. There were some news reports that Vince McMahon at this point has decided that he just said F it.
I heard that too. Yeah.
He's walked around just saying whatever.
This is gonna be a fun. No, this is gonna be a fun Vince McMahon. This is the first time where he's like, let's just see what happens.
I mean, here's how you know he's thinking like that. He started pushing Apollo Crews. He got behind Apollo Crews.
Well, maybe they took him out. They took him out of the match.
There's a lot of these cash-ins that I forgot about, weren't paying attention to, was watching in and out, so I didn't necessarily see them. So over the last 2 days, I've seen all the cash-ins.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that's led, the match before the cash-in, or, for some of the ones where they cash in the night they win it, the Money in the Bank, just to get a real gauge on everything. So I have watched a ton more recent wrestling than I have in a long time. The one thing I can say is that Roman Reigns' biggest enemy was Vince McMahon and how he booked him, because his matches were not bad. There were a couple of those Roman matches I watched. I was like, this guy's really good.
Yeah.
He's really
And then they book him to lose at the end by Money in the Bank cash-in.
All right. So that's actually going to lead us in. So you're the guest here. Tell us what and how we're going to do the worst is we'll do the worst of the worst is our number 1.
Yeah.
But the best of the worst is the 5. Okay?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
All right. What's your number 5 worst cash-in?
All right. Number 5 for me, and I was going back and forth on this one, but I ended up putting Carmella on the 5 worst list.
Really?
Okay, so
You're gonna have to explain this one, sir.
So, for these cash-ins, just to give a warning, it's not just, for me, for some of my placements, it's not just the cash-in necessarily itself. It's also kind of some of the things that came out of the cash-in, or what happened with them when they got the title, or what happened beforehand. And I just thought this whole situation with Carmella was just an absolute mess from the start of the thing. When she first won the Money in the Bank briefcase, automatically there was all this controversy about like, oh, a man won the first women's Money in the Bank ladder match.
Yes.
Which I wasn't that, I didn't have that big of a problem with it, but I do get where they were coming from. And they ended up redoing the match 2 weeks later for her to win again. She's the longest holder, right?
Yeah, she held it for months, I think. Wasn't it something like 200 days or something like that?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to counter your Carmella thing by saying this. You're right. At the end result, it was a mess. If you look at the whole picture, I think WWE should have stuck to their guns the first time, because James, and I said this at the time, I will die on this hill. The James Ellsworth interference in that first match is what we in the business like to call heat.
Yeah.
It was supposed to make you mad, because you got to remember, Carmella wasn't very good. She's not very good now either, but she was really not good a couple years ago. She was not a wrestler, and you could tell in the ring that she was terrible. She was really terrible what she did as a wrestler. So for her to have James Ellsworth help her win, and especially if it's a guy as snivelly and as Weasley as James Ellsworth was, that character at least, if it was a guy that you can convincingly see the women wrestlers beating him up and getting back at him, and maybe he has a little comeback, but really it's like you can convince yourself that Sasha Banks can make him tap, right? That guy doing the dirty work for Carmella, who's not a wrestler. And by the way, you got to remember, James Ellsworth had not 1, not 2, but 3 victories over the phenomenal AJ Styles in a professional wrestling ring. So he had some bona fides, right? So that whole thing, them scrapping it and doing it over 2 weeks later, that was in fact a mess. That was terrible.
I don't have a problem with them doing the finish. My problem is that they retconned it.
Yes.
They got cold feet.
Yep.
And she held the contract for like the longest time. I think she beat out Edge. And when she cashed it in, what was the ref thinking when she tried to give him the briefcase?
Mike Chioda. So that was senior referee Mike Chioda, who was recently released after 30 years with WWE. Yeah. He, by the way, looking back on this, Mike Chioda was involved in most of these cash-ins. Mike Chioda was the referee for most of these cash-ins. Like, it was weird how Mike Chioda was always the one. But that was a weird moment too, where she was like, right now, and he's like, you sure you want to do this? Do you really want to do this right now? Like, what? You really want to do this right now? Like, who was in his ear telling him to stall? Why were they telling? He had never done that before. No one in the history of cashing in was ever like, are you sure you want to be a champion right now? I don't know about this.
It was almost like he was stalling for time, as if for Vince McMahon to think about whether he wanted her to win or not.
Right, but in kayfabe, it was almost like, I don't believe you.
I don't believe you really. I don't think you really want this.
Now, listen here, young lady. I don't believe you. It was so weird. Like, just believe her and cash it in.
He didn't believe her delivery. She should have said her line with more enthusiasm. That's what it is.
Right, from the diaphragm. But listen, I liked that cash in because it was the night after WrestleMania. It was after Charlotte's match with Asuka. She got beat up by the Iconics. It wasn't convincing until they double powerbombed her. Then I was like, oh, okay, this is how it happens. And then Carmella comes in and wins. I'll take that. I actually liked it. I don't know. I disagree with it being on a worse list, but I agree with you. The entire package, they should have just committed.
Hey, you know what? We've had only 3 female winners. You know, I'll put them somewhere on the list. You know,
right.
You gotta be somewhere. Be on the worst list.
Well, there are a couple on my worst. Actually, there's at least one on my worst list. Actually, my number 5 worst one is a woman's one. It's Alexa Bliss on Nia Jax.
Interesting.
At Money in the Bank, right after Nia Jax's match with Ronda Rousey. I thought the psychology of that didn't necessarily make sense. Looking back on these matches, you can kind of tell who's going to win / cash in that same night, because in the Money in the Bank ladder matches, they don't do a whole lot. They come in, they maybe take a spot or two with the ladder, and then they leave for most of the match, come back and win it, and then win later on. Same thing here. Alexa didn't really take a whole lot in this match. Left, came back at the end of the Ronda Nia match. Everything seemed fine with this cash in until Alexa Bliss didn't knock Nia Jax out with the briefcase.
Oh, yeah.
She did everything else. She knocked Ronda Rousey out, and that helped set up their SummerSlam match, I think it was, specifically so that Ronda can bend Alexa's double-jointed elbow back. But she hit Nia Jax over and over again in the arm and in the shoulder, and then kind of knocked her down with a weak DDT and Twisted Bliss, which I don't believe, because Nia Jax is 275 pounds and Alexa Bliss is maybe 90. Like, I don't buy that from that height and that distance for her to beat her, even after a match with Ronda Rousey, because Nia Jax didn't necessarily take a whole lot of punishment in that match other than her arm. Like, she didn't get beat up or knocked out, really, and Alexa didn't hit her enough, or hit her, I know, I can't hit people in the head. Fine. Hit her in the back. There's a huge, listen, when it comes to hitting somebody with something in professional wrestling, the back is one of the safest places to hit. You get a big, especially with something like a briefcase, you get a big loud smack, especially you got this huge broad area to do it in. Smack, smack, smack. I believe you're knocked out from that. Shots in the arm and a Twisted Bliss, I didn't buy it.
Yeah, I could see where you're coming from. It did also take a while to set up the cash in, looking back at it.
Yes.
Like it was a solid couple minutes of like, oh, I'm about to give it to you. But wait 1 second, I gotta beat you down a little more. I gotta hit you with the briefcase, throw you over the announce table.
Right.
I didn't have, when I was looking back at that, I just thought as meh, because the whole point of it was just to kind of set up, just kind of to delay the Ronda Rousey win till SummerSlam. That was the whole point. She was just a transition, an easy way to go from Nia Jax to Ronda without having either of them look that bad while they lost.
Right. No, you're not wrong. This is on the bottom of my worst list because honestly, there weren't a whole lot of terrible cash-ins. Most of the ones, other than the great ones that you can think of, were meh. They were whatever. Yeah. They were fine. This is maybe the worst of the whatevers. Like, this is the most memorable of the whatevers. Like, the whatever, there's a long list of whatevers, but this one is the worst of the whatevers. So you're right. You're not wrong. I needed number 5. So it's right there. My number 4 worst one. My number 4 worst one has to be. Actually, I'm going to switch this.
Ooh.
I'm going to switch this. So
really
that's
building
done.
Up the anticipation.
Yeah, my number 4 worst one is The Miz winning over Randy Orton to win his first championship with Alex Riley in his corner. This was it was a stupid setup. Like, it was a dumb cash in. Like, it was just silly. So the whole thing sets up on a Monday Night Raw, the Nexus comes in and beats up Randy Orton, and then Husky Harris, before Bray Wyatt, Husky Harris takes out Randy Orton's knee before Randy Orton has a match with Wade Barrett. The knee doesn't really come into play really at all, except it's injured for some reason, which doesn't make sense to me, because why would you do that if it doesn't really come into play in the match? So the match is over. Randy Orton's leg is hurt. Miz comes in after the match, after the beatdown, after the match, cashes in. Randy Orton's still standing. Randy Orton, again, is not really knocked out or anything. He's still barely on his feet because he's got the leg thing. They have a back and forth. They have a match. RKO into the skull crushing finale. And here's the only reason why this match is notable. Two reasons. A, it's Miz's first title win. And the biggest reason is because that's where we get the angry Miz girl meme from.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, angry Miz girl. Yes, there she is. There, hi, angry Miz girl. But it was a dumb cash-in. And the match went on for a long time, so I still didn't believe Miz as a champion, because he could barely. He was going back and forth and barely in a match with Randy Orton, who had just competed in a match and gotten beat down. It was a dumb cash-in. Yeah. It was a stupid cash-in, because it was like, why not cash in when the person is, if you're a heel and your whole thing is you're gonna do the snivelly heel thing and come up from behind when the face is down and at his worst, and then you're gonna cash in, then why not do that? Why when he's still kind of healthy and can still beat you up?
It's a little weird. It's also kind of unfortunate, too, because he falls into, for me, The Miz fell into the same category as Jack Swagger, of that I just think it was too early. It was not the right time to put the belt on him, especially not for the main event of WrestleMania.
Right. Now, to give him some credit, The Miz, it did force The Miz to up his game. And he did go to a slightly better level than he was at before he got the belt. But that's not how it should be. You need to get to that upper level before you get that belt. And you're right. It didn't, looking back at it.
Prove that you are already at that level when you get there.
Exactly. Looking back on that, it didn't work for me. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is, I'm not sure if this is too low or not, but Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman, when he won 2018, Money in the Bank. And this was one of those, we've only gotten a few of these, which was he announced his cash-in advance at Hell in a Cell, in a Hell in a Cell match between him and Roman, which should have been a killer match. These two have had great matches before, a great feud. This should have been almost like a continuation or even a blow-off to it. It could have been really good. And then at the end, it just kind of fell apart. It all started when Braun was put through a table by like a Roman spear, and they're down. And they're dead. Forever. For good. And Dean comes out, and Seth comes out. Drew and Dolph, and they're fighting on the cell. These guys are still down, like 5 minutes has passed at least. And then here comes Brock, who just kicks down the door, beats them up, and suddenly the crowd is getting super excited just for them to announce it's a no contest. Brock leaves, crowd booing. You see that logo on the side, it's over.
First of 2 Hell in a Cells that end in a no winner.
Yeah. First of the 2 years in a row.
First of 2 in a row. Now, this is unprecedented before, because your number 4 is my number 3. So I'm just gonna jump right in and go right along with you. They died after that spear. First off, this was, I knew it was because it was 2018 and it was the stupid red cell. I knew it was, regardless of Mick Foley being in it. I knew what it was going to be. I knew it was going to be a tame Hell in a Cell.
I totally forgot Mick Foley was in this.
He was the referee. I knew.
You're right.
And he botched the count a couple of times because his count wasn't consistent. It was a sanitized match, not a whole lot of anything hardcore really happening in it. The biggest spot that happens in the ring before the interference is the table spot, and they're literally down forever. They overbook the hell out of this match because you then have the rest of the Shield and a pre-championship Drew and Dolph come out, and they all climb up to the top of the ring, up to the cage for no reason. And they do stuff on the top of the cage for no reason. And then they come down the side for no reason. And then before Dolph and I think it was Seth, toss each other or pull each other off the cage onto a table, they do the thing I hate. I hate seeing this.
Where they just fall.
They look at each other. They kind of right. They kind of look at each other. One, two. It's like, oh, just pull each other off. I'll know I'm going if I feel you pulling me off. If I'm late, oops, pull me off. Oh, it was at least there wasn't a pad underneath the table. They were down forever. They were down forever and a day, and it didn't make any sense. It made no sense whatsoever why they were down for so long. Brock Lesnar finally comes out, pulls the door in there. All right, something's gonna happen. Oh, a couple of F5s, and that's it. It's a Hell in a Cell. The whole point, the entire point, is a complete and total. Listen, here's what you have to realize when it comes to these gimmick matches, and if you don't want to, is that these gimmick matches, Hell in a Cells, ladder matches, they are designed to disregard the safety of your wrestlers. The safety of your wrestlers is not important in these matches, right?
100%.
Look, there's an old thing in wrestling, right? You apologize to the guy before you go out there, so you don't have to do it after. So there's no hard feelings after. Hey, listen, we got this last man standing match. Sorry in advance, and you just do it, and it's supposed to look as realistic and as barbaric and as hardcore as possible. Yes. And if you don't want that to happen on a yearly basis, then don't have Hell in a Cell as a pay-per-view on a yearly basis. Don't have Money in the Bank as a pay-per-view on a yearly basis. Don't do it so often. So then you don't have to hedge your bets and say, everybody be safe now. You kids play nice. No, that's not what the whole thing is supposed to be, or at least before all this happened. But yes, you're right. So this whole thing was super sanitized and watered down for your protection. And then there was a no contest. There's no contest in Hell in a Cell matches. What?
That's how it is. I guess
get out of here. The secondary ref gets up and starts counting. 1, 2. Listen, one of you guys got to get, or maybe he doesn't count because the only way you win is by pinfall or submission. So somebody's got to get up. You sit in the corner and you wait. That's like when referees call rope breaks in no DQ matches. What are you going to do? Disqualify the guy? There's no DQ.
You can't.
Terrible. You're right. You're absolutely right. That was my number 3. You're absolutely right. Terrible. What was your number 3?
All right. My number 3. This one pained me when I saw this so much. It is Baron Corbin. Pain because you know, there was a time when I was a Baron Corbin fan.
Oh, you were the one.
Right? Yes, I was the one.
I don't think Baron Corbin's ever been a Baron Corbin fan.
I liked the guy. I think he had potential. I wasn't sure about his Money in the Bank win. But hey, Jinder was champ. If he was champ, Baron can be champ. And then this happened. So it's a match between John Cena and Jinder Mahal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what such excitement from the sound of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember how the match ended, but
I do because I just watched it.
You just watched it.
How did that match end? Watched it. I think Baron Corbin interfered.
Did he interfere?
He interfered. He interfered.
I know it wasn't a clean finish.
He interfered, so it was a DQ.
So it was a DQ, and this is 6 days before SummerSlam.
Uh-huh.
The big rumor going around was he was going to cash in SummerSlam and possibly win. And he cashes it in here on Jinder Mahal. And when the bell rings, John Cena distracts him. Jinder Mahal rolls him up.
Yep.
For the 3 count.
Yep.
Baron is so furious that he takes off his shirt to show his pudgy belly.
Krang was in the house, yes.
And they made a character out of it. And that's it.
Listen, we're on the same wavelength again. That's my number 2, Baron on Jinder Mahal. That was awful. It was awful on so many levels. First off, it was awful because it forced me to watch another Jinder Mahal match. Secondly, it was terrible because I saw what they were trying to do, right? They were trying to add heat to the Cena match at SummerSlam. They were trying to put Jinder in there with a guy who also gets booed, right? So maybe, just maybe, John Cena gets cheered and Jinder gets booed since people really don't like Jinder, except they didn't grasp the concept that people really don't like. Like, not, oh, I want to see him get beat up. He had go away heat. He had turn the channel heat. He had I don't want to watch him heat.
And I hate when people say, like, oh, go away heat. It's the same thing as normal heat. No, it is not.
No, it is not.
No, it is not.
No, it is not. No, it is not. And Jinder had go away heat. And the match happens. It's not a great match, but fine, whatever. SmackDown, fine. Baron comes in, beats up John Cena. Jinder Mahal leaves. Baron Corbin goes up the aisle with the case. Then comes back down. Then is like, yeah, I want to cash it in. Yeah, I want to cash it in. Yeah, I want to cash it in. Meanwhile, he's looking over his shoulder the entire time. You can see him eyeing. He does the side eye. He does the side eye the whole time, looking for John Cena. First off, as if John Cena isn't going to be there. Listen, say what you want to about John Cena. At that point in his career, he was going to be where he needed to be at the right moment. You have
to throw him out of the whole freaking arena to get a shot.
Right. You need to look at, as a character, I need you focused on Jinder Mahal because you know John Cena is going to be there. You don't have to look until you need to look to toss him off to do the spot. Secondly, the spot was dumb. It was stupid. Also, people actually wanted to see Baron Corbin beat Jinder Mahal because they were tired of seeing Jinder Mahal with the belt. They were This was if there was ever a time.
This was me.
If there was one time in the history of ever where Baron Corbin was gonna get cheered and where people were gonna believe Baron Corbin winning a championship, it was that night and only that night. It'll never happen again. It has never happened since, and it was that night in that arena. If it was gonna happen, it needed to happen then, and they botched it. They botched it.
And not only that, but Baron Corbin, this was an obvious burial on him.
Yes.
I don't know. Could it have been the doctor with the concussions? I don't know. Probably. But there's no way you can argue against it. What? To set up a feud with John Cena? John Cena won with one AA at a time where everyone was kicking out of it.
Right.
So it clearly wasn't to set up feud for him to win.
No.
This was done to punish him. And I'll give Baron Corbin credit. Where other guys, we'll get to them later, have completely crumbled from this, Baron Corbin at least somewhat picked himself up. He is now a solid, mid-card, upper mid-card guy.
Correct. That's exactly where he should be. He is a solid heel in the middle of the card. Really from any generation. Like I've looked at like some older stuff, 80s, like I love watching the 80s, 90s stuff. He would fit right in with the 80s, 90s stuff. He wouldn't fit in so much in the Attitude Era, but he would fit in like with that old school heel mentality where it's like, okay, like he doesn't quite have go away heat because he's not on screen long enough for you to really want him to go.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not a championship champion. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to fight Drew McIntyre at SummerSlam, probably, right? Like, he's right where he should be. He's in a goofy.
Don't give him ideas. Don't give him ideas. He'll write that down.
They will. He's in a Goofy King gimmick though, right in the middle of the card. Stay there. He's fine. Yeah. No, you're right. That was awful. That was just awful. Let's see. That was my number. That was my number 2 and your number 3. Right? We seem to be on the same wavelength. What's your number 2?
All right. So my number 2 is the first clean Money in the Bank loss, which was Damien Sandow. He is my number 2.
I wonder what your number 1 is then. But all right, well, talk me up here. Why was that your number 2?
So I remember watching that Money in the Bank, and Damien Sandow's an interesting choice. Mm-hmm. Not one I would have gone with, but you know, who knows? Maybe they could have saw something in him. They didn't, clearly, but
clearly.
It was John Cena was the world heavyweight champion. And he had recently come back from a shoulder surgery. And Damien Sandow's got his nice little briefcase, which is all dolled up, looks like it's straight, like he's going to a business meeting. I love that.
I thought it looked like it was made out of chocolate, but yes.
He beats down John Cena. He beats him on that injured shoulder, that injured arm, with the briefcase. And usually this would be the point where a guy would cash in and they would hit their finisher and they would win the championship. Very easy. Been done before, can do it again. Goes into a long match. Really, it's almost like he went straight into rest holds as soon as it started. There's not much else to say about it. After the cash in itself, he quickly became forgotten and a complete joke.
There is. And I have a lot to say about it right now, in fact, because again, we're still in that same wavelength because that was my number 1 worst cash in. So they did, let me explain to you how deep they went into this whole John Cena's hurt arm thing. They had a doctor at ringside at various points throughout this whole period of time. And including this match, this doctor was there to check on John Cena, and if the doctor said no, then John Cena couldn't go on. But John Cena soldiered on and kept going and would keep saying, "No, you leave me alone, Doc. I'm gonna wrestle with my arm hanging down." Sandow comes out to interrupt John Cena the night after he wins the WWE version of Big Gold from Alberto Del Rio. The whole thing is dumb. Because, and this actually goes back to the reason why The Miz on Orton is on my list. Because they told the same story. Face champion has a hurt limb. Here comes the Money in the Bank guy to beat him up. However, that Money in the Bank guy isn't a technical wrestler, doesn't have a technical finisher or submission of some kind that targets that body part. It's not like Randy Orton has a hurt leg. Let's send Bret Hart or Kurt Angle out there to break his leg and take his belt from him. No, let's send the Miz out there who can barely do body slams. Same thing here. Let's not send, Kurt Angle, arm specialist. Let's not send Ronda Rousey or
Del Rio.
Let's not send Del Rio back out there. And Del Rio, the night before worked on his arm. Let's not send Del Rio back out there. Let's send Sandow, who doesn't have an arm finish. His finish was a full Nelson Slam called the You're Welcome. It was basic as hell. And it had nothing to do with the arm. Why would you do that? Here's why you would do that. To get the belt off, to get the briefcase off of him. Why would you get the briefcase off of him? Because you never should have put it on him in the first place. They put themselves into a corner. If Sandow as a surprise winner of the Money in the Bank, it's a good pop surprise for the night. But then what do you do afterwards? If you have no intention on making this guy any kind of even a contender, even if he cashes it in and loses in a regular match stipulation or does the RVD thing, I'm going to cash it in at SummerSlam and I'm going to whatever, right? If you don't think he's good enough for prime time to be in a 20-minute match once in his life, then why would you give him the belt in the first place?
Yeah, and it's not the worst thing in the world to lose. At some point, we've only had one loser at this point. We would need to kind of make it more unpredictable if the Money in the Bank winner would win or lose instead of making it a 100% win rate.
Right.
And you can do stuff with this. You can make a story out of this. You can give him a good reason of why he lost and have him just ripe on that for 2 months.
Right.
Get some heel heat out of it.
Right.
But immediately when he lost, it's like he just tumbled.
Right down.
Fell straight down.
Right down. And by the way, this was, you got to remember what era of Cena this was. This was Super Cena. So Super Cena kicks out of absolutely everything. And Sandow, I think, goes down to one attitude adjustment. It was terrible. It was awful. They booked themselves into a corner. And poor Sandow, because I here's the one other thing I will give the Miz credit for. I liked Damien Mizdow. I liked Sandow as Miz's stunt double, taking clotheslines on the outside while the Miz was taking clotheslines, right? Miz is in there getting atomic drop. He's on the outside selling like he just got atomic drop. I liked that. But then again, that pigeonholes him and puts him in a corner that he's now struggling to get out of still to this day. How do you turn this guy serious? How do you make this guy a contender? How do you make this guy anything else but this one-dimensional character? Same thing here. They just buried the poor kid and they just fed him to Super Cena for no reason. They didn't have to feed him to Cena on this random Raw. It was so dumb. It was such bad booking. It was terrible.
It was not good.
My honorable mention is Swagger on Y2J. It was just so nothing. It was so mediocre and nothing. After, I think it was an attack by Edge, and it didn't make any sense. It didn't mean anything. It was on the heels of a story that meant nothing and didn't go anywhere. It was so meh. Yeah.
My honorable mention was Brock Lesnar. Not even as much for the cash-in, just for what it represented. More than anything else.
That's interesting. And that's not on your number one. So now I got to know what your number one is.
My number one is John Cena when he cashed it in on CM Punk.
Huh.
And I did this for a couple reasons. The match, it was a great match. I'll give them credit. But when he won the Money in the Bank, it was one of those things where it felt like it's like when Charlotte won the Rumble. It didn't need to happen, but they felt like they needed to because it's John Cena,
right?
And they need to have their top stars do everything,
right?
But when you get to the match itself is great. It's on Raw 1000. It gets a lot of very exciting. John Cena has him in the STF, and then all of a sudden, I mean, I don't know if anybody else heard this, but I could hear heavy breathing coming from when Big Show chugging down that ramp. And the cameraman did horrible at this because we could see him just slowly jogging his way down, pouring buckets.
Yeah.
And he comes in and lands probably the softest blow I've ever seen. To just Johnson and it's over. It ends in a DQ. This is the first time a Money in the Bank winner does not win the match. And this should be a huge moment, and you book it like nothing. A normal, like the most predictable nothing DQ finish that you would see on any Monday Night Raw, on any given match.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about the moment after where CM Punk turned heel. I don't care about The Rock. I don't care about any of that.
I was just going to say, well, you know why, right? Because they had other things they had to book.
They had other things they wanted to do. I don't care about that. It made it... Money in the Bank is one of the biggest, at this point in time, was one of the biggest things in WWE. You knew when you had a Money in the Bank winner, you were in for something big. At least a big moment.
Mm-hmm.
And all they used this Money in the Bank for was to pop a rating. To pop a rating with, I think, and I will put this down as one of the worst DQs up there of like the last decade.
That's pretty bad.
There wasn't even any like shock value to it because, again, you can see Big Show slowly jogging to the ring. So it's like the impending doom of what's coming right past down you.
Mm-hmm.
It was a moment that stuck with me.
Yeah. I'm more generous to this moment than you are.
I have no love for it. No remorse. No
I
mercy.
like the match. The Big Show's interference was just a tool to get to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. Because if you remember, the Big Show gets spine busted by The Rock and then immediately takes off. We never see the Big Show again. And the rest of that couple minutes, it's just Cena, Rock, and Punk. And it's Punk's heel turn and blah, blah, blah. I'm more generous at that moment than you are. I get it. I understand. I don't know that that's over Sandow, though. Over Sandow. Because Sandow was just a complete career destruction.
At least with Sandow, I kind of knew that he was going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
It was against Cena. So I already, in my mind when I was watching, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I knew what was going to happen off the back of it. He was probably going to tumble down the card. But it's just taking such a big moment. This was the moment where the Money in the Bank briefcase started to be used more, not as this big moment, but as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
As a tool to be used for just to make a match. Just to make a match. Not even like this big moment that should be one of the biggest moments of the year. Just another match.
Just another regular match. Okay.
This happens.
Okay. I don't agree with how high that moment is on your list.
I was so sure that when I was putting this stuff together, I didn't even have to think about that one. That was number one at the start. I have no mercy for this one spot.
Wow.
That is it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's strong.
I hated it.
That's strong. That's strong.